Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to do a couple of hygiene checks before we kind of move forward for introductions and stuff. Um, Given all of us are working from home, internet issues, etc., might be there. So, in case if you're not able to hear anything or audio or video issues, just refresh your page and it will start working again. Let me start by wishing everybody a happy Ramadan. The times are tough. Let's pray for these trying times to be over. And I hope everybody is safe and sound. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Krishna Khandelwal. I'm the Chief Business Officer at Locus. And with me today, we also have Aisha Zafar, who is the Director of Sales for Southeast Asia for Locus. Aisha, do you want to say a quick hi before we start into the presentation today?
Absolutely. Hey everyone, happy Ramadan and hope you're all staying safe. Super excited that you all could join in today and fire away. We are very excited to have this conversation and have these learning sessions. So over to you, Krishna.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we some of you guys who joined us in last session, you are aware that this is a part of our initiative where we call it sharing sessions, where we want to share what we are seeing on our side, how we can cope up with whatever is happening around us, and towards that, today is another chapter in that series of knowledge sharing session where we aggregated our communication and discussions with various partners of Locus globally, and how are they responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in some scenarios also looking at what will happen once the lockdown gets over and preparing for the times ahead. So towards that, we have prepared a presentation where Aisha and I will be walking you through certain topics, and just to set some agenda on what are the things which we want to cover today. Pretty cohesive agenda for the day, where we want to start with talking about the impact of COVID-19, very little on how that's going to impact the global economy, the impact of this on Southeast Asian economies, the impact of this on industries, various industries, and over here we want to bring in some of the numbers which we are seeing, how our customers are seeing demand going up, demand going down. So this is live from what we are seeing on the ground from our customers. Then what are the fundamental changes our customers have gone through, whether it's in terms of operating models, whether it's in terms of working with various suppliers, whether it's in terms of managing deliveries and warehousing operations and stuff like that. So we have collaborated. We have collaborated almost across all the large partners of Locus, what we are seeing on the ground, and also, of course, what we are hearing and what in general some of the other companies out there are doing. Then the idea is talking about a little bit about the e-commerce bit, on how we are seeing some of the very interesting trends emerging. And of course, the idea is to also talk about what can we do to prepare for the future. Um, some topics I'll be covering, some topics Aisha will be covering. Aisha, of course, has a lot of on-ground experience of working over the last few years in Southeast Asia. So she'll be able to bring in a real perspective and share some real examples of what she's seeing on the ground over there as well. And I see a lot of our participants today are from Southeast Asia. Let's start by looking at COVID-19 outbreaks impact on global economy. I think all of us would have gone through various reports, various economists predicting various things. For us as a business, what was the most critical part was to understand the impact of the size of the impact of COVID-19, and for how long will it last, right? So towards that, Bain and Co. I'm sure all of you guys are aware of what Bain is, and they are one of the strategic consulting partners of Locus globally. and they have, of course, been engaging with their customers. Towards that, we picked up a report from their kitty, which essentially talks about that the impact of COVID-19 is going to be a severe multi-quarter impact, and this helped us in preparing for various scenarios. And I think when it all started, there was a bit of misconception or misunderstanding, I would say, where the idea was that the impact of COVID-19 potentially, like all kind of factors on V shape, W shape, U shape kind of recoveries were being discussed. One thing which matters most, no matter what the shape of recovery would look like, is that the impact of this is going to be a multi-quarter impact, and all of us need to plan according to that. Let's talk about like various countries and regions. We picked up a report from World Bank and on how they believe the 2020 growth forecast would look like, right? And just to help you in reading this chart better, the red bars essentially represent the baseline scenario, and the yellow graphs represent the worst case scenario. Most of the countries have already started progressing towards a worst case scenario, barring certain countries like Vietnam, where things are much better compared to other geographies. But for almost all the other markets or economies, the worst case scenario is something which is becoming a reality, right? In terms of relative understanding, I don't think so. It's a hidden fact that Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, China, Philippines will be doing much better compared to some of the worst hit economies in terms of growth forecast. And I think a lot of this has to do with economies like Indonesia and Thailand, Malaysia being consumption-heavy economies. They're gonna be hit massively. But there is a silver lining in all of this. Compared to developed world, compared to United States, compared to Europe, the growth impact on emerging economies is gonna be much lesser, right? So in a way, a lot of people will be looking towards developing economies, both in terms of investments, also in terms of opportunities, which of course I'm very sure all of you understand means good things for us, good things for everybody who's on the call today, whether it's investors, whether it's large multinational corporations looking to do business. All of this will essentially mean that the things might, like, this is a time where we should potentially be preparing for opportunities which lie ahead. I'm sorry, like the chart essentially, like, it's slightly like hazy to understand, but we'll be sharing these deck with all the participants. But what this essentially talks about is what are the various impacted sectors and regions, of course, broken down into China and rest of the Asia Pacific. And we have broken down the impact into three things. One is short term, which is the impact of the COVID-19 on the short term growth projections. What is the recovery scenario looking like, and what is the downside scenario from here? Because we believe that one of the most critical things which each of us on the call needs to do is to do various scenario analysis and prepare for the business outcome for those scenarios, because nobody knows what the end might look like, right? So from that perspective, we just thought it would be a good understanding or a good chart to present, where we talk about the short-term impact, the recovery scenario, and the downside scenario. The red and the yellow essentially means bad, the N means neutral, and the G means good. As you can clearly see that the green color bars are pretty low in number, essentially focusing on critical things like healthcare and essentials segment. There's a decent bit of neutral scenario, focusing a lot on consumer goods, retail as an industry, where there's a decent chance that the recovery might look good once the lockdown gets over, right? But there is a lot of red and a lot of yellows, oil and gas, entertainment, travel, tourism, all of us are aware. But one thing to take away from this chart essentially is that the essentials industry, e-commerce, groceries, retail, a lot of these industries will go through fundamental evolution or a change and what we are seeing in terms of short term might actually stay perennially, and this might call for a structural change. Let's talk about specific industries. So we're talking about hygiene products, like something which should have been there, but because of COVID-19, this has just come into an increasing awareness, and there's an increasing action taken by corporates, individuals, countries, governments on hygiene products and consumer health. E-commerce and packaged foods and beverages. Very soon, you will see how these industries are getting impacted in terms of real numbers from Locus's perspective. um, Industries where we already are seeing a lot of negative impact, and this impact might just last for a few quarters ahead, is on restaurants, fashion and luxury retailers. We'll present some numbers here as well. Big format, big box retailers, electronics, furniture. Some of these discretionary sectors are getting impacted most, as much as the growth practically flattening out to zero in the month of April in certain countries for some of these industries. And I'm sure you guys are all aware about travel and tourism. With this, let me talk about Locus on the ground report. This essentially is a representation of what we are seeing across different industries and sectors. One thing also I want to announce is this will be something which will be a regular um, thing which will be released at the first week of every month for what we are seeing in the last month. This is an initiative from our side to talk about what is happening in the industry in general, so that our partners and people who want to read and know about what's happening in the industry are fully updated. Let me spend some time to explain this graph or a chart. Um, this is prepared across millions of orders, 2.5 3 million orders a day, B2B, B2C, couriers, transporters, 3PLs, all of them contribute towards this. This is also aggregated across 4 regions: North America, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Indian subcontinent. So this chart, these graphs essentially represent the real world scenario of what is happening, like what we are seeing. And of course, this is not done by surveys or anything, but live customers of Locus. And on the y-axis, it's normalized orders, right? So it doesn't represent the actual orders, but normalized across all the industry.
Hey, I think, sorry, but Krishna is facing some internet issues working from home. So I think we can all relate to it. So we'll just give him a couple of seconds to join back. While what this chart, I'll take it over from here till the time he joins back. So this is purely based on the data that we have and the industries and the segments that we work across Locus. So you can clearly see from October to October 2019 to March 2020, how the trends across different industries have changed. So for example, e-grocery, if you look at, so from Feb 2020 to March 2020, which is the green line, has surged enormously. And if we look at April, because we didn't have the consolidated data, there would be a certain surge in spike volumes as such. So we've spoken to our clients across these industries, from FMCG, from e-commerce, retail, pharma, and also have done a lot of data crunching at our end. So if you look at retail, so retail from October 2019, in terms of the millions of shipments that we have on Locus and being transacted on Locus, there was a steep decline from October to November 2019, majorly because most of the festival sales in India and Southeast Asia happen somewhere around October and early November, and that leads to decline. Hey, Krishna, good to have you back.
Yes.
Why don't you take it?
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
So I'm just explaining about retail as an industry. You can take it from there.
Yeah. So FMCG and groceries essentially represents essentials, and retail over here represents the brick and mortar, the physical stores, on what kind of impact they have seen. And e-commerce represents the discretionary, like apparels and furniture and electronics as a category. And pharma includes essential healthcare services and medicine deliveries to customers' doorstep, right? And I don't think so it's surprising to see a big jump in FMCG and e-groceries in an industry. in the month of March, starting from February, to the tune of somewhere about 50 to 60% jump. I think this number is going to be quite massive when it comes to April as a month, which we'll be releasing very soon in terms of a report, right? But I think it's evident that the trend of e-groceries and the fast-moving consumer goods, given how much focus is there on a big chunk of this demand of FMCG also came because of people stocking up the inventories, right? So there's a possibility that in the month of June or July, there might be a little bit dip. But for the next 2 months or so, we see the e-grocery and the FMCG trend only going to go up from here. We also wanted to share some statistics which I believe are going to fundamentally change. This was a trend which was already in motion. As an end consumer, I can clearly attest to this, that e-commerce has been a big factor for me to fulfill the requirements for essentials at home. And what we did was we bifurcated the numbers into store-based retailers who offer e-commerce and web-only retailers. If you look at the growth, right, across all the regions, when it comes to store-based retailers who are offering e-commerce as a platform for end consumption, the number of orders have gone up anywhere between 50 to 80%, right? This also establishes that omni-channel and home delivery as a network is extremely essential for any retailer to have. And the increase in number of orders is not getting translated into the increase in revenue, simply because a big chunk of this jump is coming from small ticket size items. When it comes to web-only retailers, right, you can clearly see that they are seeing the jump as well. But the jump in case of store-based retailers offering e-commerce as a method for fulfillment is significantly higher when compared to web-only retailers. This is probably the most interesting data point we want to talk about today in terms of end customer and how their expectations have changed. All of us have been fully aware of how over the course of last few years, the end consumers have become extremely hungry for convenience, right? And it would be very normal to expect that the customer expectations as far as convenience is concerned probably should have gotten relaxed, but actually no. In bunch of surveys which we have done, we have found out that more than 80% of customers are actually still expecting like proactive and transparent communication from carriers. They're expecting their time slot adherence to be very high. And they're also saying that if they don't get the proactive communication or on time in full deliveries, it's going to permanently impact the perception of the retailer or the brand, you know? So the customer expectations has actually stayed same even in these tough times. And one thing which we need to take away from this slide is going forward, the most important thing once this whole lockdown situation gets over is that the e-commerce shoppers, given the percentage of e-commerce as a channel is going to increase, the customer expectations is going to again come back into great focus. And this might potentially be a good time to start looking at developing things or working on strategies which might focus on improving customer experience once the lockdown gets over. Very quickly summing up, like we have to talk about supply chain, Locus being a supply chain automation platform. We have divided the impact of supply chain COVID-19 into three components: execution and planning, network, and functional aspects of supply chain. From an execution and planning perspective, the lack of digital enablers, both in terms of end-to-end visibility and decision-making, was clearly evident and thing which impacted most across supply chains. Sum total of experience across different supply chain executives, just because this was such an unprecedented demand supply crisis, it never existed. And how to approach this scenario, people don't know that. Supply chain network perspective, there are a lot of broken links. There's a risk of concentration. And from a functional perspective, we are calling this a black swan event. where most of the historical tools or softwares or analytics models which you have developed either for demand planning, forecasting, or inventory management are going to be completely rendered useless because a lot of models, a lot of softwares never really budgeted for a demand scenario being flat out zero, right? So do expect a big increase in terms of inventory holding costs, in terms of opportunity cost when it comes to inventory management. Let me invite Aisha to actually spend a good amount of time now to talk about what we are seeing on the ground in terms of various sectors and what some of our customers are doing to handle it. Aisha, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Krishna. That was a great presentation. I personally learned a lot. So just for everyone, Krishna is our global expert and he works across multiple geographies. So if any one of you is joining, either someone outside from SEA, I think this would be super useful. And in general, I think times are changing. There is a lot of overlapping regional cross practices, good practices which are changing. So it would be very helpful to know how things are being done and how some other regions are coping with the same problem. Okay, so quickly talking about this slide. This slide will be covering about what we are seeing global, specifically in SEA across the different industries. So I'll talk about the challenges that we are seeing as a tactical and as operational issues, and how are the innovative ways that are coming across. So specifically starting with grocery as an industry, because that's one of the industries that's being most talked about and also has seen a lot of positive surge in the movement. So it comes with experience via the secondary source of research, and also having our customers like Big Basket, Grofers, Happy Fresh, which have actually seen 4 to 5x surge on an average in the volume since March, and are coping to ensure the fulfillment with 60 to 65% of the overall manpower strength. So that actually, and like Krishna mentioned, the customer experience and the customer expectations has not changed. So that poses a great opportunity, I would say, in the positive manner, but the companies are still trying to come up with innovative ways and probably better ways of managing expectations. So some of our clients that we work with in US and UK have seen huge time slots booked out for 2 weeks, order backlogs which are not being fulfilled. Grocers are deploying maximum order limit so that the product hoarding issues which were seen in US as a market specifically, that is curbed, and also it ensures availability of essential items to maximum buyers. Also, what we've gone ahead and seen that even companies like Happy Fresh, My Grocer in Malaysia, whose USP was actually time slotted deliveries and 1 hour, 2 hour deliveries, have completely removed the time slots and are actually moving to same day or next day delivery commitments to ensure that the commitment is in line with what can be handled. And a lot of companies in India, such as Milk Basket, have also levied delivery fees or something called as a COVID tax because of manpower shortage. Obviously, this becomes optional and it's more of a company to company perspective, but we're seeing different ways how online grocery companies are dealing with it. Also, what becomes very critical, and that's an overlap between grocery, e-commerce, and logistics as an industry, which has been very one-to-one mapping kind of an industry where there is dedicated routes for dedicated vehicles. Now, with the government restrictions, with the hotspot creations, with the lockdowns, dynamic reclustering on a daily basis to handle volume surge, to fall in line with government restrictions is becoming more and more important. And also it's manually impossible to do that, and that is where someone like Locus would come into picture. Now, companies are also incurring a lot of cost to deploy specific COVID-related hygiene factors, and also at a reduced, because companies such as Big Basket and Milk Basket have now 3 shifts or 4 shifts against the 2 shifts that they were having earlier. Also because of social distancing, which needs to be managed and incorporated at the warehouses as well. When we talk about structural changes in grocery, crowdsourcing fleet platform tie-ups have become very lucrative. Companies such as Grab, Gojek are actually tying up with Happy Fresh. In India, Uber is trying to tie up with companies such as Big Basket, Grofers to try out deliveries and see how successful that is. Because the surge in volumes currently is no one really knows how long that would last for, and having resources hired and trained on an immediate basis is not really a very feasible scenario, even though that is an option that a couple of companies are exploring. Also, what we've noticed is that most of the companies from the customer service perspective have reduced call supports and are focusing more on faster ticket resolutions via chatbots or via online portals or auto-generated FAQs, and also quickly doing refunds to ensure that the customer experience is not impacted. And also the call has reduced, so hence they are able to cater the reduced manpower at the call centers with the existing resources itself. And something which I'll be talking about in e-commerce and logistics specifically would be the contactless deliveries. So a lot of SMSs, automated calls to inform that the package has been delivered is becoming more and more prevalent as an industry in grocery. Coming to e-commerce, so e-commerce, I think Krishna's covered most of the bits, so I'll quickly brush through it. But Essentials specifically in e-commerce have opted more for contactless deliveries. Parcel locker companies are seeing a huge surge in volumes. Also, with the online delivery giants such as Tokopedia, Shopee are more and more preferring companies such as QuickPort or such as Paxil for ensuring contactless deliveries. Even Lazada in Vietnam has set up their contactless delivery kiosk where the deliveries can be maintained and ensured without the safety hazard of COVID. One of the major structural changes that we've seen in e-commerce and in industry is that the option of pay later, which has been enabled by Shopee, Gojek with a 30-day credit period to ensure and support the people who are facing fund crisis or income crisis, and obviously with the loan limit of certain amount. Also, what this ensures is that earlier the entire process of credit approval, which was taking somewhere between 3 to 5 days, has now reduced to 24-hour approval cycle. So it's very quick, very easy, and also ensures that the digital payment model is pushed through. Non-essentials in e-commerce specifically has been hit really bad, like Krishna did depict in the previous reports as well, and the studies that have been done. So discretionary categories, apparel, beauty, lifestyle, decor, electronics, they've been hit pretty bad. So Amazons of the world, Lazada, Zaloras, Flipkarts, Mintras, all of them are struggling, but they are also seeing it as a great opportunity and strategizing to ensure once the situation normalizes, how would they get back on feet and what are the strategies to ensure that the customers are again start ordering online. Also, one of the interesting factors, which I think from a personal experience, is that as the lockdown and the COVID situation expands, the category of essentials and the products that fall in essential category is increasing as the time goes by. So something like a grocery or just food, which was earlier an essential for the first 2-3 weeks, now even a dongle or a hotspot Wi-Fi connector, a USB, all of these can also be included in essentials, since majority of the world's professionals are working from home. And there's so many other things. So hence, we do see that a lot of non-essentials and giants such as Amazon and Lazada would start the delivery super soon. Okay, now very quickly covering about retail as a sector. So one interesting fact that we came across was that retail in the APAC is expected to see relatively a very minor decline in the growth projections of 1.3%, while in North America and Europe, these numbers are expected to decrease by 4.8 and 4.4%. So in total, we do see SEA plunging back and coming back on its foot much faster. So one of the big hopes is that South Korea has already started normalizing the situation. Vietnam has already opened up and has controlled COVID fantastically. And we're hoping that in the coming weeks, Indonesia, India, and the rest of the SEA economies would see similar trends. In terms of the tactical issues that retailers are seeing, the retailers globally, which were essentially brick and mortar models, have started home deliveries, again, tying up either with their own available staff or with the crowdsourcing platforms. A third model would be via food aggregators such as Zomato, Swiggy, or a Gojek. So Ramadan being one of the biggest sale periods for Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines, and specifically the largest sale which happens in the first half of the year, the consumer buying decline has affected the overall projections for 2020, specifically for the offline retailers. So how they're trying to capitalize is by changing supply chain models, by ensuring that there is quick switch from an offline to an online to an omni-channel. This could be via ensuring tie-ups with giants such as Lazada or Happy Fresh, or it could also be via setting up their own direct channels, which they were not pushing earlier. So that's something that we've really seen. Just to give you some numbers here, so Tesco has Tesco, which is one of the largest offline retailers in the world, has seen an increase in online capacity of 103% in a space of 3 weeks, which so a growth like this would essentially take about years for them to achieve. And before the crisis, it was only 7% of the overall retail sales that they did. So it's phenomenal how these numbers are coming across, and there is a big opportunity that we see even for offline retailers. Also, if we talk about the structural changes which are happening here, so multi-brands, even luxury products, I would talk about electronics specifically because that constitutes about the largest chunk in terms of sales numbers for e-commerce companies, and companies such as Apple, Samsung, Xiaomi, which were exclusively store-only sales companies, have resorted to online modules. Also, the stores were not really allowed or prohibited earlier to do these sales online, but these companies are moving more towards omni-channel, and those restrictions have been relaxed. So I do see this change is there to stay for longer. And yeah, and one of the other interesting factors that we've seen is that Singapore commercially did its first drone delivery on 19th of April. That was a medicine delivery, and the government is very aggressively promoting it as an efficient and a contactless delivery mode, also which might become very cost effective in the times to come as the business assumes economies of scale. Now, very quickly, sorry, we'll do a quick time check here. So very quickly covering food delivery. Food delivery has been one of the massively hit industries. What we've seen is that restaurants are changing from takeaways on deliveries. They're also collaborating with taxi aggregators such as Uber, such as we also have a Lalamove. We also have one of our clients based out of Singapore called Shop, which has tied up recently with 5 taxi aggregators and which gives them access to about 15,000 plus fleet for delivering food from premium and including Michelin star restaurants across Singapore. So they're testing this in Singapore and would be expanding in Hong Kong, Beijing, Shanghai, Jakarta, and Bali once the model becomes successful. So that's one of it's pretty interesting and very exciting also to see how quickly models and industries, because in the strive to survival, are changing their models in an agile manner, and also in things which earlier were seen as non-conducive are becoming extremely conducive now. Going to FMCG as an industry. So what we've seen in FMCG specifically is the essential, the companies working in the essential segments have seen a surge in volumes. Now there is a huge gap in the demand and supply for FMCG. So there is a huge demand for home and personal care, for healthcare and hygiene. However, there is a supply issue due to manpower issues, due to factories being closed, due to the manufacturing being halted for a couple of days. Now, demand forecasting for FMCG which was earlier, say, a monthly or a quarterly activity, has now become a weekly activity. And that we do see that that would continue to happen, simply because no one right now knows how the situation would be. Also, a lot of cross regional inventory movement is happening to deal with the inventory shortage in FMCG. And we also see a fundamental change happening in FMCG's industry, because they have, specifically in India, FMCG companies such as Reckitt Benckiser, ITC, have tied up with companies such as Zomato and Swiggy for ensuring that there is brand visibility in front of the customer, and also ensuring that the product is available as and when. This definitely changes the entire bundling and packaging model, but also might be a huge future prospect and something that can be leveraged upon. So cross industry resource utilization is something that we are seeing more and more with the increasing COVID expand. Also, one silver lining in this is that P&G has registered the largest sales increase in US in so many years in quarter 1. So their organic sales in their home market, that's USA, has increased 6% for the quarter, mainly because of the household staples category that they work in, and the personal care. These numbers are yet to be declared by Unilever and the other giants, but I do expect similar trends coming from Unilever and Reckitt Benckiser as well. And last industry that we're talking about, services. I think there has been a huge slump across Southeast Asia. There has been some movement in developed nations, majorly on the essential services, but in Southeast Asia, across industries, telecom, pharma, multi-finance, beauty, there is a complete slump. So now, the only services which are actually doing well are the online entertainment. So a quick fact here, that Netflix has observed more than a double rise in paid customers. They have close to about 16 million plus registered customers that they have declared at the end of the March. And they are expecting similar surge in Q2 as well across different regions. Yeah. Hey Krishna, you're back.
Sorry guys, downsides of working from home.
No, that's absolutely okay. I think I took quite a bit of time here. So do you want to quickly do the conclusion for the discussion here? The post-COVID?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of, in nutshell, if I have to summarize what we are seeing in terms of people preparing for future, right, or the post-COVID scenario, is a lot of FMCG brands across Southeast Asia are now experimenting with scenarios such as the sales is done with a really good mix of physical as well as digital sales, which is going to lead to an extreme dynamism of the permanent journey plans for the sales executives. A lot of FMCG brands are also exploring reducing or becoming more agile in terms of their transportation or supply chain planning. Aisha talked about platforms like Gojek and Grab coming up in like super focus. We are seeing that an experimentation is also underway in terms of FMCG brands exploring that. And of course, in terms of fulfillment to retailers, I think a lot of relaxation has happened in terms of commitments of next day or same day deliveries wherever it was happening. In terms of home services, of course, the demand is negligible at this point of time, but there is a massive expectation of this pent-up demand to be realized as soon as lockdowns are over. Pest control services, installation, furniture installation, electronic installation, banking services. A lot of these brands are working towards preparing on how to handle the pent-up demand. There is an expectation that from a BAU perspective, the demand could be as high as 2 to 3 times in the few weeks following the lockdown getting over. From a retail perspective, I think almost everybody who was working with Locus in terms of their store fulfillment or store sales was the biggest component of their revenues. Almost everybody is experimenting either to go and launch their own e-commerce channels if they have not already done that. A lot of focus, as Aisha mentioned, is on setting up crowdsourcing as a method or or a fulfillment channel. A lot of people are also looking at owning up the supply chain, um, captive component of supply chain, so that there is lesser and lesser dependence on the external thing, but more control in scenarios like COVID-19. If it were to happen again, a lot of large enterprises are focusing on that. From a courier perspective, almost every courier company we work with is now looking to experiment with newer products or operating models, if you will, where somebody who was just in the business of pickup and deliveries is now also going towards providing hyper-local on-demand services for restaurant food deliveries, etc. as well, right? So new and more alternative channels of business is what the courier companies are focusing on. And automatically a lot of focus is going on agility towards processes and technology which they have been using. I don't think so. We need to talk about e-commerce, given everybody is aware on how fundamentally this is changing. As we move towards the end of our presentation, I wanted to bring up a very quick study which was done by Harvard professors. One of them was Nitin Noharia, who's a dean of Harvard Business School right now, and in that the 2008 global financial crisis, a lot of companies were evaluated, and uh, the idea was to figure out what kind of companies came out winners from the recession. So the study was divided in the four categories: prevention focused companies, essentially companies who went aggressive on the cost cutting mode; promotion focused companies who went aggressive on spending and acquiring customers and looking at financial crisis as a as an opportunity. Pragmatic companies who were practical and progressive companies essentially were the companies who had a really good mix of operational efficiency, at the same time focusing on forward-looking thing. 85% of companies in this segment had fallen post-recession, like the demand had gone down, their cost has gone up. Only 9% of companies who were falling in the progressive section came out as post recession winners. The takeaway, and we'll be happy to share this research and study with each of you guys, it's publicly available, um, is to focus on operational efficiency first, to figure out what are some of the things which you can do in your operations and processes to drive cost reduction, and then after that you follow on cost reduction plan. Also, to use this time of low demand to figure out where your competitors are, what were some of the gaps in your offering, to spend time to build up on those gaps. The other component which is different in this crisis compared to what it was in global financial crisis is, from a technology perspective, a lot of spend was done in a very capex manner. Thanks to the evolution of software as a service, we believe that companies who are looking at digitization and taking it to next level, right, and not just in terms of information but also in terms of decision making, a lot of focus will come on software as a service, simply because it's extremely flexible in terms of opex. There is no practical capex requirements. And I think this is the time where, if we club with the previous studies, this is the perfect time, we believe, where companies should be exploring, filling in the gap, coming up like at the same level in compared to competition, if there was any gap which was existing. Um, what were the impact in terms of companies who were focusing on excessive cutting of workforce? Once the recovery started coming back, they were not able to reduce their cost quickly. The rehiring cost was actually quite high, and it was difficult for them to keep up with the scale once the recovery starts coming in. Operational efficiency, companies who were focusing on it, who focused on using tech, who focused on sorting their processes, they not only reduce cost at the time of low demand period or recessionary period, but it actually led to operational reduction in cost on a permanent basis. The profit showed faster growth once the demand spikes coming in. And the employees turned out to be more creative in terms of reducing costs, given they were given assurance of them having job and the focus was on operational efficiency. The mantra, according to us, is you need to stay connected to your customers. You need to make investment decisions. Given now there are options available such as software as a service, to invest for future. And in terms of images short-term focus, we are requesting our customers and partners to focus on operational efficiency rather than just flat out cutting down costs, right? This also kind of sums up the entire roadmap from a technology perspective. With the advancement of software as a service, we believe that it's fast, it's easy to implement, the cost to implement is very low, it's scalable as per your business, it's managed and hosted in cloud, and essentially it's pay as you go. If your demand comes back up, you use this tech. If it doesn't come back up, you don't use this tech. So I think there's a lot of agility in the system available compared to some of the previous crises. But with this, let me end our presentation today, and let's move towards a question and answer. And there are some of the questions already out there. Let's pick up some of those questions. Aisha, you wanna pick up some of those questions and answer, given a lot of focus is on Southeast Asia in terms of its questions.
Sure, Krishna. So I think okay, so first question I've already answered, that what is the name of the restaurant delivery company in Singapore? So that's Shopee. It was a coupon ticketing platform and coupon delivery company, which has quickly in the last 20-30 days switched from the coupon delivery to becoming one of the fastest growing restaurant delivery and food delivery company. And that's purely by the crowdsourcing module. Now I would talk about one of the questions which has been upvoted is, as the demand for groceries increasing, is there a way I get to know where my next warehouse or storage facility should be? Absolutely. So in fact, we do work, and I think because the time was pretty short and we were pretty focused on discussing macros and micros, but we are doing this activity across industries with some of our clients. So we have a consulting tool available where we are helping our customers in Indonesia and Southeast Asia and India help evaluate not just in grocery but also in FMCG and in 3PLs, as to if you have create what if scenarios. So if you have 5 warehouses and you want to shut down 2 of them, which 2 should be the one, or vice versa, that hey, I have 5 warehouses and I want to further increase my my hyper local warehouse reach based on the demand where it is getting where it is coming from. So all those kind of decision makings can be done on the basis of Locus's platform recommendations. Also, going a step ahead further, we are recommending our partners and clients and helping them that what would be the optimal fleet mix, what would be the optimal routing pattern. So not just the last mile delivery pattern, but also remapping all the warehouse territories, areas catered by each warehouse or each distribution center, each hyperlocal warehouse. And also further going into more multimodal delivery models, such as what should be the ideal fleet, what should be the ideal mode of transporting, what could be the potential delivery SLAs that you could promise your customers. Can it be 2 hours? How would your operations and costs get impacted? So the entire simulation analysis is something that we are helping them out with. The next question was for cross-border logistics with the lockdown. Would you suggest truck or air? Taking into consideration moving by air would be 3x the cost. Absolutely. And also considering air right now, most of the countries are under lockdown and also have a ban on the international international cargo movement. Even domestic cargo is restricted to mainly essentials and consumption products. We would currently, what we are seeing from India and SE as a market, we are recommending on ground and rail movement, because that is already happening. And as each day goes by, we are seeing more and more relaxation in terms of government for these on ground services rather than air. So we would definitely recommend that. The next question is, Okay, can you throw some light on few system changes in pandemic that could trigger for CPG as an industry? Absolutely. So I think I covered most of the issues that we see. So one of the breakthroughs that we see specifically on two fronts. One is the sales order taking. So the permanent journey planning, where quarterly or 6 monthly permanent journey plans were prepared, and the direct sales team would go to these retail stores week on week repeatedly. I think that is completely gone for a toss. So dynamic PJP or permanent journey planning or sales beat will come into and become a new normal, considering the restrictions would stay and considering it will be a phased out closure. So that's something that we definitely see on the order taking platform and order taking front. We also see a lot of sales being directed by e-commerce as a channel for major FMCGs, and also their tie-ups with the mid-market companies such as Udaan, such as Store King or Bukala Park B2B segments, who have a wider range of direct deliveries to smaller mom and pop stores. Because one of the things that we have noticed, and what's surging and which we think is a trend to stay at least for the next 2 quarters, is that modern trade sales is declining while general trade is flourishing. So go local, community sales, all these local varungs are doing pretty well. So I hope that answers most of the questions. I think Krishna is again dropped off because of some network issue. Really sorry about that, but hope you had a good session. You have our email IDs up on the board. Please feel free to get in touch with us for any support you need. And our marketing team would be sharing the presentation with all of you guys soon. Thank you so much and have a very good day.